Hi, and welcome to the homework for Merrily We Roll Along, part of the Sondheim series, where Peter, Filichia, and I are going to be teaching Sondheim every Tuesday in August. And Merrily We Roll Along is a show that's really coming back. It did not do well on its first Broadway outing, but it's coming back later this year. And it's well known for being a show that moves backward in time, which sometimes gets really confusing, but it's also got its own refreshing approach to Broadway that really makes you think about the structure of a show. I'm wondering, and Peter, you got some thoughts about this. What would happen if we took the exact same show? Because it skips a few years every scene, the exact same show, every scene is the same, but we do them in forward order instead of backward order. Would the show still be as enjoyable? How would it be different? What are your thoughts, Peter?
I don't think it'd be remotely as enjoyable. And the case that I would quote more than anything else is the show written by Sondheim's mentor, Oscar Hammerstein, who, after the success with Oklahoma and Carousel, both adaptations, by the way, suddenly Oscar Hammerstein wanted to write an original musical. So that's Allegro. It ends with a little bit of glimmer of hope, but it's pretty much of a downer in the second act. And so many shows have second act trouble. There's even a book called Second Act Trouble. So with second act trouble happening, Allegro was the first flop that they had. It would run the second shortest amount of time of their 9 Broadway shows. And it was pretty much forgotten. No movie was made, no TV special was made, and all that. All right. I say that Sondheim and George Furth solved the problem of Allegro by going backwards. Now, to be frank, they had a template because there was a play called Merrily We Roll Along, written by no less than George S. Kaufman and Moss Hart, who were most famous for You Can't Take It With You and The Man Who Came to Dinner. This was not a success either, but it did deal with professionals who are on a trajectory to compromise their ideals and make what they can of their lives and not worry about what their promises they made to themselves and to others as time goes on. So what we have here in Merrily We Roll Along, the 1981 musical that played a number of previews. It opened on October 8th for previews. It didn't open till officially open to critics till November 16th. And on November 28th, it was gone. However, it left a terrific cast album. And as a result, because it fails so quickly, so many directors in this country says, I can fix it, I can fix it. And that's what they've been doing, trying to fix it. And now I really believe it has been fixed. And the version that's happening right soon in New York is I've already seen in a previous incarnation off Broadway. I really think it's a masterpiece because the template was always there for it to be successful because the second act is lovely. Because they're going backwards in time. This starts off with you meet Franklin Shepard, who's rich and happy, and has been a famous movie executive, so on and so forth. But we find out as time goes on that he really was supposed to be a Broadway composer and write really good musicals. And he, as his collaborator, friend, and then enemy, Charlie Kringus says nobody does it better than the composer. And he says he makes money very well. He does that very well, but he's even better as a composer, and he should be composing rather than making money. But of course, this is a big conundrum in American society. You know, do you make money? Do you not? I mean, people collect stamps. People collect Chinese vases. Maybe is there anything wrong with collecting money? So that's always been a question with Merrily We Roll Along. But because we start off originally in 1981 when the show was first produced, and it goes back to 1957 when they're just out of college and they're just starting and hoping for the best and writing feverishly to get successful. It's far more pleasant to watch than Allegro was. Where you say, another problem, another downer scene, and you were never convinced that the ending was happy enough. Here, the last song, Our Time, It's Our Time, is so beautiful that you really do go out on a high that you never went out on in Allegro. So I do think going backwards, Kaufman and Hart knew what they were doing, and I believe Stephen Sondheim and George Furth knew what they were doing too.
So a lot of people think that the show is about the friendship between Charlie Kringus and Franklin Shepard, and Mary is more of a sidekick or a lesser character. I think it's interesting that since Sondheim and Firth got to pick a name for her, and they chose the first two syllables of the name of the show, that they might have been telling us that this is a more important character that we might otherwise think. Anyway, your homework assignment. I want to know what you think about the show going backwards, and specifically what the show would be like if it went forward, if you would enjoy it as much, if you think it would still work. Go ahead and put in the comments your attitude towards the structure of the show, moving, as some might call the gimmick of the show, moving backwards in time instead of forwards in time. How do you feel about that? So
Well, another thing too, John Simon, who was the critic for New York Magazine at the time, who was a tough critic, really tough, brought up the point. If you had done it the other way around, it would end in a way that wouldn't be so involved with either Frank or Charlie, but it would concentrate more on Mary, and that would be wrong. So it would make her the leading character. That if you did it that way. And the other factor in this version of Merrily We Roll Along, we're always believing that Mary would love to have married Frank.
Yeah.
It's never stated specifically. It is posed as a question once, just once in a very oblique way. But for the most part, we're led to believe that it's unrequited love. And as Somerset Maugham said, the only love that lasts is unrequited love. The love fall by the wayside, which may sound cynical, but it also may sound accurate to you as well, especially if you have some unrequited love and are still thinking of the woman or man you left behind way back that you would have loved to have been with. So, so that Mary is a very intriguing character. She doesn't come to the type of end we would like her to. She becomes a raging alcoholic, and that's rather sad considering that she's so full of beans at the beginning of at the end of the show / beginning. So it's really too bad, that that Mary doesn't get what she wants at all at any time during the show. Frank gets to be rich and happy. Charlie, we get the impression, has a very successful serious play. He wants to write a serious play. He wants to write a serious musical, and he seems to do very well now on his own without Franklin. But Mary's the one who doesn't do well at all. She goes from job to job to job, and we see that she's become a terrible alcoholic. And not a good party guest either, as you see from the first scene, which is where the show begins, at a party, which isn't much of a party. Sondheim said he really wanted the score to sound like a golden age musical. He was very famous for writing Not a Tune You Can Hum, which is a joke that actually happens in a song late in the show. And so he said he really wanted this to be his warmest score, his most melodious score. It's also the only musical he wrote since he came into prominence with Company in 1970. Before then, he had only written the words and music to two shows. Granted, the first one did have an overture. The second one didn't. But starting with Company and going all the way through, this is the only one that had an overture. Merrily We Roll Along. And it's a very conventional overture in the golden age sense. That starts off with beans, and then it goes into the romantic song with strings and coming in and all that, which is what used to happen in musicals. That, in fact, in Gypsy, you have it happen too. After the excitement of Everything's Coming Up Roses and all that, you get Small World, which is a nice ballad. And so you get that here too, a really conventional 1950s overture. And as most musical theater enthusiasts will tell you, the last great overture. Granted, it doesn't have that much competition because so few shows have it these days, because they know the audience is restless. They know the audience wants to get home and go to work tomorrow. I mean, in the old days when wives were housewives, they were in no hurry to get home. They didn't worry about their husbands going to work the next day necessarily. Some did, of course, but now overtures are really a luxury that many musicals feels they can't afford because it's too much time taken. And really, if you go back in the 20s, some of those overtures were like 7-8 minutes long. It was amazing. So and it was some of that to do with the fact a lot of people used to arrive late purposely, and at least this way they wouldn't miss so much of the show. But the fact that Merrily has an overture tells you that it does want to do a conventional job in some respects.
And notice they didn't stick the overture at the end.
The average person has a tough time with show business stories. You might say, well, a minute, what about that chorus line show? That did all right, didn't it? Yes, but
Gypsy,
that
Gypsy,
what? And Gypsy
Gypsy.
too. Gypsy didn't do that well. The most Gypsy ran was 702 performances. And,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, that's certainly they made money and all that. But I mean, 702, even in those days when Pajama Game and Damn Yankees ran over 1,000, wouldn't you think that Gypsy, which is a better show than either one of those, they're good shows, but isn't Gypsy better? Sure it is. Why didn't it run longer? Because David Merrick, the co-producer, said people just aren't interested in the problems of people with show business. And Chorus Line got around it because it made it an interview. And all of us have been through interviews. We all know how scared we are and we're worried about saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing or, doing well. And then at the last minute saying something wrong that scuttles the whole thing. Oh, no, we're not going to hire him. So, that's why Chorus Line was successful, because it was able to connect to the common man. I doubt that the common man has ever been in a situation where he's said something and then is asked to repeat it, and then people don't listen to him after he repeats it.
So I
So I
hope
think
we've
that's
given you, I
what.
hope we've given you some different perspectives on the structure of the show. And now give us your opinion and go ahead and put in the comments what you think about the show going backwards and what it would be like if it went forwards. The Merrily We Roll Along class is part of a Sondheim Online Master Seminar that meets Tuesdays from noon to 1:15 p.m. To sign up, visit thebroadwaymaven.com. And here's a Stephen Sondheim playlist.